Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my masterclass, my skills masterclass, which is really all about demonstrating how we can capitalize on this amazing Teams-based platform from Microsoft Teams, and how Microsoft Teams, we can enable Microsoft Teams to truly empower the development of our people. Now, I have four main goals for the session's masterclass, for this masterclass session. Four main goals. The first main goal I have is that I want to show you how you can leverage Microsoft Teams as a platform, and in particular, how you can leverage an application within Microsoft Teams called SkillsMe to enable your employees to take charge of their own personal development, their own development journeys. That's my first goal. The second goal I have is to show you how managers can contribute to your employees' development journeys, these development journeys that they're taking control of, how managers can participate in that process and become an important part of the process. The third goal I have is to show you how the SkillsMe application actually enables this thing called developing a growth mindset, not having a fixed mindset, but truly enabling a growth mindset. It's supporting tenets of growth mindset, such as, the ability to model skills that you've mastered for others across your community so you can accelerate development, the ability to set and take ownership for your own development goals, the ability to learn new things and be willing to learn new things, to identify the things that are most important for you to really focus on developing through the next period. So how the application, SkillsMe application, supports this thing called growth mindset. And then finally and importantly, I want to show you how the application actually sets you up, sets your employees up to have the most important, what I refer to as connect conversation with their managers. So a connect conversation for me is that important career development discussion, is that learn and grow discussion. Perhaps that discussion with their manager is connected in some way to their performance discussion, but it's disconnected because it's really focused on their development, their career path, their aspirations. Where are they trying to get to in terms of their career journey within the organization? How the application sets them up to have the most effective career development conversation with their manager. And those conversations that take place perhaps, once every quarter, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So these are my goals for the session. I'm just going to share my desktop. I'm just going to share my desktop. And what I'm going to do is introduce you to the SkillsMe application that's sitting within Microsoft Teams. You can see we're in Microsoft Teams here. The Microsoft Teams menu is over here on the left-hand side. You can see the Microsoft Teams menu here on the left-hand side. And here we're looking at the SkillsMe application. It's available from the Microsoft Teams App Store. It can be accessible from within any channel within Teams, or indeed can be set up to be accessible from within a tab within any team. So it's right there in the flow of your team's work. It could be in a particular manager's team, it could be within a particular project team, accessible from a particular project team, or maybe it's accessible from a channel that you've set up within your organization to focus in on employee development, on skills development, on talent development. It could be accessible as an application from any of those types of channels that you set up within Teams. Now, what you're looking at on the screen here, and I'm just going to come into the individual team member view here. So what you're looking at within Teams is what we refer to as a skills board. This is a skills board for a fictitious role that I've set up called the sales leader role. We can set skills boards up for any single role within your organization, any sales role, any marketing role, any operational role, any support service role, consulting role, technical role, any roles within your organization, we can set skills boards up for. And a skills board is based upon something called a skills profile for a particular role. In this example of the sales leader role. There are 4 main skill categories for this role: strategic planning, relationship building, execution excellence, growth mindset. These are the 4 skill categories. And then within each of these skill categories, there are individual skills. These tiles that you're seeing on the screen here represent individual skills. These are the skills that, if this role masters these skills associated with this role, it takes them to a very important destination in terms of their development within their role, and takes them a step forward in terms of their overall career development, because the place they get to is that they master the role. If they master all of these skills associated with the role, then they master the role. And perhaps you might argue, when they get to that point, that they're then ready seriously to think about what's next for them, the next role that they might aspire to within their career journey within the company. So these are all of the roles. Now, skills profile represent those skills that drive success in role. And in a sister application, we set up the profiles. And then what happens is that when a role comes into the application, one of your employees comes into the application, their role, their skills profile is already set up for them. If I just click on the profiles menu here, you can see all of the profiles that I have set up here associated with different roles within my company. And the skills profile associated with the role, when an employee comes into that, is already set up for them. And this is an example of that sales leader role already been set up. Now, when I first come into the application, it looks something like this. Is what I refer to as the vanilla view. All of the tiles, all of the skills are white. And the reason for that is because the skills profile has not been activated. It's not going to help one of your employees. It's not going to help an employee because it hasn't been activated. The employee hasn't activated their skills profile. And so what happens is, in order for the application to truly start to add value to an employee, guide the employee through this journey towards mastering all of these important skills associated with the role, what happens is they activate their skills profile. And the way they activate their skills profile is that they go up to the top left-hand part of the screen. We have 3 options here: skills board, perspectives, and reports. I'm right now on the skills board. And what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to click on perspectives. Now, when I click on perspectives, I go into a view that enables me to complete my perspective of the work that I feel like I'm doing in my role currently against each one of these skills. Where am I in my development journey towards mastering each one of these critical skills? These are the skills, remember, that drive success in role. Where am I in terms of mastering each one of these skills? And I go through a process of completing my perspective. Now, the word perspectives might be familiar to you. It might be familiar to you because when perhaps you prepare, your employees might prepare for a connect discussion with their manager about their career development. Maybe what they do is they complete some kind of perspectives on the work they're doing. You know, maybe it's feedback. Maybe they reach out to others who give them feedback to help them plan for that connect conversation. What we're doing here, though, that I think is a little bit different, is that we're enabling perspectives to be completed on something that's really important for the role. It's their skills profile for the role. These are the critical skills that drive success in role. So what we're doing here is a deep dive into really reflecting on where am I in terms of my journey towards mastering each one of these critical skills that drive success in my role. I'm just going to click on the first skill here called strategic planning. Strategic planning, this is the skills category, and the skill itself here is called sales strategy. You know, how well do I do in terms of building out that sales strategy? You know, what is it we're trying to do? Where is it we're trying to go? Who is it we're trying to win? You know, building out the sales strategy. I'm a sales leader. Having that sales strategy is important. And the way I complete perspectives is that I answer 3 important questions. The first question is, how important is this skill to me? And I'll reflect a little bit more on importance in a second. The second question is around frequency. How frequently do I execute the methods, the practices, the processes associated with building a successful sales strategy? How frequently do I do that? How frequently do I execute the things that I know I need to do to build a successful sales strategy. And then what's my proficiency? What's my IQ associated with understanding how to build a successful sales strategy? So in this case, it kind of takes two to tango. You've got to make sure that in order to master a skill, you're doing these two things. You're executing the methods that you've learned, and you're learning about those methods. Proficiency is about learning about the methods. Maybe you become certified in those methods. You've got the IQ, you've got the knowledge, you've built out the expertise. But now, can you execute? Are you executing? And do you execute at the required level of frequency? And frequency is always one of these things that there's kind of always a frequency associated with executing a skill. I'll use the example of account planning in the sales space. We account plan once a year, and perhaps then we come back around, maybe on a monthly basis, we update our account plan. Maybe it's on a quarterly basis. A virtual account team might come back together and we update the account plan. So there's a frequency associated with executing account planning. And my experience is that there's always a frequency associated with a skill. It's always kind of there in the back of your mind. And so this is what we're doing when we're thinking about frequency. And the other thing I would say about frequency is that this is where having a growth mindset really lives. Growth mindset in my mind lives in this kind of frequency space, in the execution space, whereby we're always testing things. We're always trying things. Maybe we fail sometimes, but we're learning from our mistakes. Then we're trialing and testing, and we're learning and trialing and testing. We're learning, and that's how we're making progress. Through our execution, we're always executing to learn how we can more effectively execute the methods associated with driving success around this skill. That's what frequency is all about. So importance, what I'm going to do is I'm click on importance of the skill. Let's just pull down the importance menu. I'm going to say that this particular skill is absolutely critical. And there's always a time frame associated with importance. How important is this skill to me within the time frame around which I am building out my skills plan? And that time frame is often perhaps between this next connect conversation that might be coming up with my manager through to the following one. This one through to the following one, or it's in the Q1 time frame or Q2 time frame, or I'm planning my skill priorities for the next 3 months, for the next 90 days. What's the time frame around which you are planning? And therefore, how important is this skill going to be to you in this time frame, on the basis that not all of the skills on your skills board, not all the skills in your skills profile are equally important all at the same time. So we're kind of thinking about how important is this skill going to be to us in this time frame around which we are planning. So I'm going to say in this time frame, building out my sales strategy, maybe it's the beginning of the fiscal year, or in that kind of Q1 time frame, I'm going to say it's absolutely critical. Now, how frequently am I executing the methods? I'm going to say that I'm executing these methods often. And my proficiency associated with executing these, because I think I'm at the intermediate level. And you'll notice that what happens when I do this is that a color is assigned to this skill. And I'm going to talk about what the colors mean in a second. But essentially, for each and every skill, I'm going through the process of completing my perspective of where I am in my journey towards mastering these important skills for my role. And I'm doing that in the context of how important in this time frame is this skill to me? What's my level of frequency of executing the practices, the methods? And what's my level of proficiency? What's my level of knowledge associated with the things that I need to know about around this skill? And then I'm literally click on the right red arrow here, and I move to the next skill and the next skill, and so on and so forth, until I complete my perspectives for each and every skill. And when I do that, my skills board is going to look like this. It's going to look like this. I did the sales leader profile. I completed my perspectives for this sales leader profile in about 10 to 15 minutes last night. It took me about 10 to 15 minutes to really reflect on where I felt I was in terms of mastering these skills. And when I did it, this is what my skills board looked like. Now, colors tell you the story of where you are. Colors are really, really important in the SkillsMe application, because red skills based upon your perspective, red skills are skills that you're saying for this next time frame, are not going to be important to you. That's not to say they might not circle back round again at some important point in the future and become more important to you. But red skills right now in this time frame are not going to be important. So don't invest any of your skilling time in red skills. Amber skills are the new skills. These are the skills that we know are emerging, they're becoming more important to us. These skills are skills that we know that we need to invest some of our skilling time in towards developing. They're not going to be, it's not going to be our priority for this next period, but we know we need to invest in some of our time. Green skills are the most important skills to us. Why? Because the gap between where we are, the frequency gap and the proficiency gap, these are important or critical skills to us. The frequency or proficiency gap, where we are today versus mastering these skills, is at its greatest. So green skills become the most important skills. It's where we should invest our most intense efforts from a skilling point of view. Green skills. Violet skills are skills that we're close to mastering. It's that, the way I think about it is it's that final sprint to the finish line, and we've mastered a skill. And in the SkillsMe application, what happens when you master a skill, you go purple with that skill. You go purple with the skill. But when you go purple with a skill in the SkillsMe application, we're not resting on our laurels. We're not resting on our laurels, because what happens in the application when employees master skills is that they're then ready to do something that's really, really important. They're then ready to model those skills for others across the community. And what happens in the background of the application, what's going on in the background, is we're actually connecting people together. We connect purple and green together, purple and amber together. We bring people who, for them, this is a skill that they've mastered. We bring them together with other people who, for them, perhaps this is a green skill. This is a skill they're really looking to focus on in terms of their development. We bring people together. And we've learned over the years that the more that we can bring people together in this way, the more that we can connect people together, we can create these important, if you like, mentoring-mentee relationships. The more we can do this, and we can do this at scale, this can have the biggest impact upon accelerating the development of our community. And if we can do this, we know that we can have a big impact on the performance of the business. So accelerating skill development, we've learned, can be one of the biggest drivers to improve the performance of the business. And this is how we do it. This is how we do it. Now, the real reason why we do this, though, is so that we can help your employees do something that they find is very, very difficult for them to do. It's very, very difficult for employees to do this, which is to prioritize where they're going to invest their limited time in skills development, because employees don't have a lot of time to invest in skill development because they're very busy. So the reason why we have employees go through the process of completing their perspectives based upon their skills board, based upon the skills profile for their role, is so they can help them prioritize the things that they're going to work on. So what happens in the app here is that an employee's completed perspectives will look at these green skills, and they'll move these green skills over, a couple of these green skills over, and they'll put them in what we refer to as their priorities column. So I'm moving a couple of these green skills across here. One skill is around relationship building, another skill is around influencing executives. I'm going to move that across. Now, I also know that I want to, do a better job of being a storyteller. So I'm also going to move this amber skill here. This is a new skill here. I'm just going to pick this skill up here, and I'm just going to drag this skill across here, and I'm going to put this amber skill here into my priorities column, because I am willing to learn new things, which is, as we said, one of the tenets of growth mindset. And I'm going to pick one of those skills out, and I'm going to also pick up one of these violet skills, a skill that I know that I'm close to mastering, and I'm going to pick that up, and I'm going to drag that across, put two of those across there, and I'm going to put those two skills into my priorities column. So now what I've done is I've prioritized my skill development for the next bit. I'm not happy with that one now. I'm just going to move that one out of my priorities column. Let's just move that one back here. There we go, move that one back, and that will come back out and go back onto my skills board. So for the next period, what I'm doing here, or what I'm really doing here, is setting and taking ownership for my skills priorities for the next period. Here they are, the 4 skills that I'm going to focus on. I've got 2 green skills, which we know are the most important skills. I've got 1 violet skill here. I know I'm close to mastering. I'm going to move that one across. And I've got 1 amber skill, which is willingness to learn new things, So I'm just going to pick that one up here. Look, let's just drag that one across. Just made a little bit of a mistake now. I'm just going to drag that one across here, and I'm going to just take this one out. These are the 4 that I want to focus on here. Look, here we go, like that. All right. Now, this is where the magic starts. Because at the very same time that I am prioritizing the skills that I'm going to focus on developing for the next period, the very same time that I do this, my manager is also doing exactly the same thing, because what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to toggle into a different view. Now, you think that I'm in the same view. I'm not. I've just toggled out of that individual team member view, and I've gone into a manager's view. And here I'm in a manager view. Now, managers can do exactly the same thing as team members. Managers can complete their perspectives of the work that they feel like their team members are doing against each one of these important skills for their role. And in this case, I'm the manager of Christy. Christy is one of my team members. And I've gone through the process of completing my perspective of the work that I think Christy is doing against each one of these skills. And this is my view. This is my perspective. Here it is. And if I just refresh my view, if I just go ahead and refresh my view, here we go. I'm just going to refresh my view here. You will notice that one of the things that now happens for the manager is that they get to see those those 4 skill priorities that Christy has prioritized for herself for the next period. The manager gets to see those 4 skills that she's prioritized right there. There they are in the manager's view of Christy's priorities. So let's just think about what's going on here for a second. You know, this is kind of remote hybrid work in action, because the manager could be located anywhere, any time of the day. Christy could be located anywhere, any time of the day. And they're both working on their skill development from different perspectives. Christy's working on completing her perspective, the work she's doing against each one of these skills, and then prioritizing for this next period. She's taken ownership for her own skill development. And her manager is also starting to contribute, because the manager is seeing those things that Christy is prioritizing. Look, they're appearing in his or her view of Christy's priorities. And what the manager can also do is say, you know what, I agree with these 4 skills, but I also feel like, Christy, there's another skill here that I think that I'm going to move across. You know, having that challenger mindset, and I'm going to move that across, and I'm going to put that into your priorities column. And you'll notice when the manager does that, a little notation appears on this skill they've moved across into Christy's priorities column. It says here, suggested by you. Suggested by who? Suggested by Christy's manager. This is a priority that Christy's manager views, suggesting that this is something Christy should also prioritize for the next period. This is their contribution to the process. And here, if I go back to Christy's view, and I now refresh Christy's view of her skill priorities, you will notice that Christy's priorities are now made up of a combination of those skills that she's prioritized for herself, the skills that she's prioritized for herself, and also the skills that have been suggested by her manager. Look, suggested by George. George is her manager. You see that. And Christy can choose at this point to either accept, or she can choose to reject those skills that have been suggested by her manager, because she's in control. She's in the driving seat of the skills that she's going to focus on for the next period. Her manager's role is to suggest, to contribute, but Christy's in control. These are the skills that she says she's going to prioritize for the next period. Now, this is where we move on to the next phase in the process. Because just to summarize what we've done here, I've introduced you to the application in Teams. I've introduced you to this concept of a skills board that's focused on a role. Skills boards are based on a skills profile. The skills profile is made up of skill categories and those skills that really drive success in role. I've introduced you to that. I've also introduced you to this concept of completing perspectives against those skills. And when you complete your perspectives, that enables you as an employee to prioritize the skills that you're going to focus on for the next period. And when you do that, at the very same time, managers are going through a similar process for you. They're providing their perspective, they're looking at your skill priorities, and they're making suggestions around things that maybe they think you should consider as well. Now, once you've done this, you'll then set up, just think about this, you'll then set up to have the most effective connect conversation that you can possibly have. A connect conversation, again, is this, learn and grow discussion that you might have with your manager, 2 or 3 times a year, where you focus on, your development, your skills development. And what's happening here is that we are preparing for that conversation because we've now defined what it is that Christy is going to focus on through this next period. We've defined the what. And this is important because often when we go into these learn and grow conversations, we find that managers and roles spend an awful lot of time talking about the what, and they don't really spend any time talking about the how. Time kind of goes by very, very quickly. And before they know it, they've talked about the what, but they really haven't talked about the how. And so what we're doing here is setting up that what conversation. We know what it is we're going to talk about. And so in the learn and grow discussion, we can focus on the how. Now, in preparation for the how, what we can also do here is I can double click on one of these skills that I've prioritized. Let's double click on it. And when we double click on one of these skills, there are capabilities in the skill itself that enable us to accelerate our skill development. So not only are we completing perspectives, not only are we prioritizing, but we also have capabilities in the app that enable our employees to accelerate their skill development. What are these capabilities? Well, I want to point out 4 or 5 to you. The first capability is that when you double click on a skill that you prioritize, what you see is your perspective alongside your manager's perspective. You get to see for this skill, your manager's view of where they feel like you are in your journey to mastering these skills, and you get to see your view, and you get to see those 2 views side by side. This is what we refer to as alignment, having that alignment conversation with your manager, kind of syncing up with your manager around where you are. And we think this is a really important first step in skills development, because it's important that team members are aligned with their managers around where they are with their skill development journey. If they're not aligned, if they don't get aligned, what happens, in my experience very often, is that frustrations can set in. Maybe an employer might say, my manager hasn't spent enough time with me. They really don't know kind of where I am. So their perspective maybe doesn't reflect reality of what I've been doing. That might start to affect things further down the line. It might start to affect things like, promotions and things like, career development opportunities and stuff like that, important stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we get aligned with our manager. And this is how we do it. So in this example, for this skill, both Christy in this case and George's view is shown up here. So they both think that this skill is critical. Now look at the differences here in terms of frequency and proficiency. So Christy's view of her frequency of execution against the methods, the practices for developing a challenging mindset, she says she does them often. But George's view of her manager is slightly different. He says sometimes, just sometimes. And look at proficiency. Her view is that she's in the intermediate level in terms of knowledge of these methods, these practices. But George's view, she's just starting out. She's at the basic level. So there's misalignment here between George and Christy. Now, at this point, Christy could hear out what George has to say about his perspective of where she is. And if she wanted to, she could choose to sync her view with George's view, just like that. clicking on sync. And what that does is it syncs Christy's view with her manager's view. They sync their view together. They've had the conversation. They're aligned, so we can now move forward to the next stage. But Christy might say to herself, you know what? I'm not going to sync my view. I'm going to remain out of sync with you because I feel like, I'm doing more than perhaps, George, you're seeing, that you have visibility to. So we've now got two jobs to do here. The first job is that we need to make sure that we get aligned. We need to drive for sync. And the second thing we need to do is we need to accelerate development. So how do we do these things together? Well, the first thing that we do is we click on what we refer to here as experiences. These are experiences that we think will be really, really useful for Christy to help her accelerate her development of this skill. Things like, for example, in our company, we have these things called challenger pods. Challenger pods. These are a group of people that come forward from different parts of the organization to really help to develop the most effective challenger-based insights, most effective challenger-based content for our clients, challenger-based pitches that we can deliver to our clients. It's the pod that works together to really execute against some of these challenger methods. And so one of the first experiences for Christy is to become part of that pod, become part of the project team. So this is something that George is suggesting that she does. He's suggesting that for this period of time, she joins that challenger pod. He's also recommending an experience associated with teaming up with John Barnes on the team. John is an experienced, pitcher of challenger to airlines. He's an experienced challenger seller to senior executives within airline companies. And he happens to have a big presentation coming up on November the 11th. And the experience here is for Christy to do some shadowing of John as he starts to prepare his pitch and actually be there on the day that he delivers his pitch. Other experiences might include, attending events, participating on panels at events, maybe spending, time with the customer in a particular part of the customer, with a particular group within the customer's organization to learn more about, what's going on the customer side. Maybe other experiences might be to work more closely with engineering to learn more about our products, or maybe it's with, the digital transformation team to learn more about, the impact of some of our solutions on customers' digital transformation journeys. These are all experiences that appear here that can help Christy accelerate her skill development. Now, where do these experiences come from? They can be suggested by George as the manager. Christy can suggest experiences for herself, or you can create as a sales enablement leader, for example, a list of experiences that can be exposed to Christy, but importantly, aligned to the skill here that Christy has prioritized, and they will appear here in the list. So experiences can be added. They can appear here automatically from a library of experiences that have been added, aligned to each one of these skills, or they can be added by Christy herself. Experiences. Now, the thing about experiences is that not only experiences can accelerate development, because we know that on-the-job experiences are the best way to accelerate our skill development, on the basis that we go to these learning classes, these training programs, and within a certain period of time, it's something like 30 days, we've forgotten 80% of what we learned in these courses. The best possible way to accelerate skill development is through experiences on the job. The other thing about experiences is the more that Christy can involve her manager in these experiences, the more she can involve her manager in these experiences, the more she can have a manager actually suggest experiences, become part of the experiences process, the more she can get aligned with her manager around where she is, the work she's doing against each one of these important skills. So this is experiences. The second thing are experts. Look, remember I said that one of the things that we do is we bring people together. Well, here's an example of it. For this skill, both Martin and Cecilia from across the community are experts in this skill. And the application has surfaced Martin and Cecilia as two people that Christy can reach out to, two experts that Christy can reach out to, using Microsoft Teams within Microsoft Teams, she can literally click on Martin or Cecilia, reach out to them, and engage in a mentoring-mentee relationship with Martin and or Cecilia. And the beauty of this, the real beauty of this, is that both Martin and Cecilia are expecting Christy to reach out to them because they've already put their hands up. They've put their hands up to say, yes, I am available. I wish to mentor other people across my community on the skills that I have mastered. And that's one of the things that happens in the application. When you master a skill, you are given the opportunity to then say, yes, I am ready and I am available to mentor members of my team or to mentor members of my community as a whole. That community could be people within my area, people within my region, or people within my community across the organization, or from people across the organization as a whole. These are experts that surface to help Christy accelerate her skill development. And we know that mentor-mentee, building these mentor-mentee relationships, again, is one of the fastest ways that we can accelerate skill development. This is one of the reasons why we do it. So these are the experts. And then we have resources. I click on resources. Now, what are these things? These are resources that we've found from across the company. They're resources that come from our learning and readiness team, from our LMS. They're resources that come from our SharePoint sites. There are resources that have been added to the list of resources by our manager, or indeed by Christy herself. She can add resources to the list. Importantly, these are resources that we've done the alignment work to, the skills that Christy has prioritized for herself through the next period. And so Christy doesn't need to spend time trying to figure out what are the best resources that can have the most positive benefit to me in terms of helping me to accelerate my skill development around this skill. What are those resources? Well, they're right here. There's a list of them right here. And also managers can see this list. They can add to the list as well. But managers can see the list and they might see things here and they can make sure that they suggest some of these things to Christy to help her. Managers can actually, in actual fact, they can add resources, as I've said, to the list. But the key thing here to note is that these are resources that have been lined up with those very skills that Christy has prioritized for herself for this next period. And this is how we personalize skill development globally across our organizations, because it means that each and every employee can prioritize the skills that they believe are most important to them for the next period. And they get a list of resources that are going to be most helpful to them against these skills they prioritize for the next period. Not hundreds of resources, but just the most important 5 as we're seeing them appear right here. So when you double click on a skill, the capabilities of the application that help drive, accelerate skill development are those capabilities that help you get aligned with your manager, experiences that can really help to accelerate, experts, these mentors, mentees that can actually help accelerate your skill development, and you get access to the right resources. And all of this is available when you double click on a skill. And obviously we're not focused on all of these skills on our skills board here. We're just focused on these skills here that we're going to be the most important skills for us to develop through this next period. They're right here in our priorities column. Now, you might be saying to yourself, yes, Alan, this is all well and good. This is all well and good, but I'm looking at this skills board here, and I'm missing skills. Can we create our own skills profiles? Yes, you can create your own skills profiles. Can we customize skill profiles? Can employees customize skills profiles? Can managers customize skill profiles? For example, could a manager suggest additional skills for a team member that might be useful as kind of stretch goals for them? Skills that might set them up for the next role they're aspiring to. Maybe skills that aren't on the skills board, but managers know might be helpful to someone who's really started to master many of these skills that might be helpful to them in the role that they're aspiring to do next. And the answer to that question is yes. You see this little red circle here, the plus sign, you click on that. It means that you can add a skill onto your skills board. A team member could add skills, and importantly, managers can suggest skills onto skills boards. And so this really talks to, this manager as a connector profile of a manager coach. What we're learning from the work that Gartner, for example, is doing is that the profile of manager coach that's having the biggest impact is the connector profile. Triples the likelihood that employees become top performers. Just think about that for a second. Triples the likelihood that our employees become top performers. The manager connector coach. And what managers can do in this application is they can connect their employees to the right experiences, to the right experts, to the right resources on the basis that managers can no longer know everything about everything. The app enables managers to become this connector profile coach. And at the very same time, managers can also connect their people to additional skills that they think might be most helpful to them as they start to think about aspiring to what's next for them. So we can completely customize our skills profiles for all of our employees. But the value of doing that doesn't just stop there. Because if you think about it, what's happening as managers go about suggesting skills onto a skills profile and employees go about adding their own skills is that learning and readiness leaders, sales enablement leaders are seeing what's happening. They're seeing what skills are being added. They're starting to spot trends in skills for roles. And obviously we can then aggregate that data up. And that type of insight enables us to improve our skill profiles, to see what the type of skills are that are being added. And perhaps we might then add those skills onto the skills profile, our next rev of the skills profile. So those skills become accessible to everybody. We start to align experiences. We start to add experts. We start to line up resources. And so skill development becomes a bottoms up process as much as it's been a top-down process in the past. And so this becomes a new way to think about skill development. That actually what's happening is that our employees are actively participating in the development of our skilling plan, our global skills plan across the company, because everybody is using this application for their role, because everybody is on Microsoft Teams. Everybody is using their skills profile because everybody's on Microsoft Teams, and managers and roles can be working in this hybrid type of way, using Teams to drive their skill development. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, yes, okay, but what about data privacy? What about data privacy? There's a lot of data here, and we're talking about aggregating data up, and we're talking about perspectives and priorities and etc. How do we manage data privacy? Well, we have this thing called Safe Zone. Safe Zone. What Safe Zone enables users to do is to be in charge of their own data privacy. With Safe Zone, employees can determine who they want to share their data with. So, for example, they can choose to share their data with their manager. In this case, my manager is George, and I can choose to share my perspective data with George or not. If I don't want to share my data with George, then I can choose not to. I can still see George's perspective of the work I'm doing, but he can't see mine. I can choose to share my data with mentors. Remember, we kind of bring people together. I can choose to share my data with mentors so that mentors from across my community can see my areas for skill development and can actively reach out to me and invite me to participate in a mentor-mentee relationship. And think about that. We've always thought about mentor-mentee relationships from the side of the mentee trying to find the mentor. But what about from the mentors now finding the mentees? If we can get those two engines cranked up, it means that we can really accelerate our skill development, because we've got, now we've got mentees really out there looking for mentees, and we've got the technology helping with that. We've also got mentors who have mastered skills now reaching out to mentees to accelerate that side of things as well. So the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts, if you will, really helping to accelerate skill development. And then finally, employees can choose to share their data with sales enablement leaders, share their data with learning and readiness leaders, but only at the aggregate level. We will never share individuals' data with anybody. We will never share individual data with anybody. The users are in control through safe zone, All right, well, I've been through an awful lot over the last hour or so. I've introduced you to the SkillsMe application in Microsoft Teams. I've introduced this concept of perspectives. I've shown how individual team members complete perspectives, how that enables them to set their priorities, how managers can participate in the process. Once those priorities have been set, how it sets up for these important connect conversations, these learn and grow conversations. And I've shown you how you double click on the skill. When you double click on the skill, it helps managers and team members get aligned. It helps employees to see a list of experiences that will be most helpful for them, and managers can add value to that list of experiences by suggesting experiences. I've shown you how we can bring mentors, mentees together. I've shown you how we align the very best possible resources from across the organization to those skills that have been prioritized by your team members. And then finally, I've shown you how you can customize skills boards so they can truly be personalized to the individual needs of each and every employee across the organization. How we take data privacy how data privacy is a very important topic for us in the application, how we support users being in control of data privacy through this thing called Safe Zone. All right, well, look, thank you very much indeed for participating. I'm going to finish the session there. If you're inclined to find out more about SkillsMe, inclined to find out more about how it can enable the development of your employees across the organization, I'd be delighted to follow up. My email alias is Alan, A-L-A-N, @pipe9.com. And finally, I'll close out by thanking you very much for attending the session. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you. Bye-bye.